At what stage is the vaccine at right now?
The vaccine itself was developed for avian, for birds, basically for chicken, for poultry industry.
Yes.
And it was developed for a different virus, which is a member of the corona family. It's a relatively large family, so there are different branches. Each virus is specific to other organism,
Yes.
or to a group of sort of animals, for example. And what we have is currently we have the vaccine for the avian virus, coronavirus, which was effective in tests. So both in our laboratory experiments and also in vivo, which means in real animal models. And in this case, the virus or the animal model is actually the patient, because we can do that in birds. Okay, we can do that in avian.
Yes.
So this is what we have at the moment. But when we saw the sequencing, once the new human coronavirus, the COVID-19, was isolated and its DNA sequence was found, and was sequenced basically, and published, we tested our for comparison to see if we can recognize the same thing, the same element that we are using from the avian vaccine, if we can find it, a similar element, on the human coronavirus. And we found a certain similarity, a certain element with certain similarity. And this is the part that we are going to replace in our vaccines. So we are going to give a similar vaccine, replacing only a part instead of having part of the avian vaccine. So we are going to replace that with the same part, but from the human virus.
Yes.
Okay, and because we know this sort of vaccine is not a typical vaccine that you commonly take for flu, for example, for seasonal flu.
Yes.
It is not a weakened virus that is given to the patient, or a dead. It's often the way vaccines work. This is a different type of vaccine. It is a subunit vaccine, which means we only take a part of the virus and not the entire virus. And it means that for us, we can do quite easily, because this is our everyday work in the lab, we can quite easily convert or replace the certain part from the avian virus to the human virus.
So if there is no vaccine for other coronavirus like SARS or MERS, how do you plan? Why it is possible to do it with the new COVID-19?
So first of all, I think there were attempts, at least. I'm not sure how much they produced SARS or MERS vaccine, but I guess they did some work on that, and definitely they did some trials on that.
Yes.
As well. But we have a different approach. Actually, we started our work 4 years ago, approximately, and we did it on avian viruses in order to support the poultry industry and to give some sort of therapeutics for veterinary use in birds, in any kind of birds. They share somewhat of similarity,
yes.
The viruses, and I think that it was a project, an entire project, which focused on many different viruses and on technologies, new technologies, and this is what we developed these 4 years. So it's not something that we did a month ago. It's something that we thought about, and we tested our hypothesis. We had the chance to test it, first of all, in the lab, and then after that in real animal models, so basically in our patients, in the chicken in this case. and it was proven to be very effective.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, excuse me. What did you say? It have proven to be very effective.
Very effective, and we believe, that because we share similar immune system, more or less, or the way it works is very similar, and we already have results from in vivo studies, from in real life, real animal models. We believe that we are in a good position, that we made a significant progress in this project. We have to be careful, and obviously we need to do safety studies, and we have to repeat it once we replace the avian part with the human part. But we are positive, and we hope for the best. We were talking about 3 months to initiate. So, okay, we are a research institute, and obviously we cannot do all the production and development of the vaccine.
Yes.
Definitely not for the whole world. What we know how to do in our facilities, we know exactly how to do the manipulation that we need to do in order to convert the avian version to the human version of the vaccine. Yes. So it will attack and it will protect against the COVID-19, the human virus. That's something that is very easy. We do it on a daily basis, and it takes few weeks, that's all. But then we want to also produce it in large enough quantities in order to begin in another round of animal model using already the human one, the human version. And this is the part that we think that we will finish after more or less 3 months.
Uh-huh.
And at that point, we will be in a position where we can initiate it can go into clinical trials and basically for production. So when you go to clinical trials, you have to first of all find a production facility which has all the certificates. Okay, it's a GMP certified facility, and there are scale-up issues for the production as well.
Uh-huh.
So again, the optimistic scenario, and at that point, basically, also the authorities will have to, or the regulators, they will have to take their own decision. What would they require for proving the safety or efficacy of this vaccine? So all we can say at this point is that in 3 months, we will be ready for that stage.
Okay.
And after that, again, the best scenario can be something like within few months after, but it can be even longer. It all depends on the regulation and the authorities and how it will be perceived and supported or approved by other, I would say, others
institutions.
Because it's not in our hands anymore.
Yes. So how long until it is distributed?
Again, I'm trying to be very cautious.
Yes.
And it is a question that is really not in our scope to answer. We are the scientists. We can only take this project as far as we can, which is to get into the clinical trials and to initiate safety studies in humans and in animal, in preclinical and clinical trials, which are regulated. But from that point on, it is really dependent on the health authorities to decide what will be their demand criteria for approval.
Yes. And now,
sorry, and that is why I cannot say when it will be distributed. I can only say when we are going to finish our part, and we hope that someone will be able to take it forward. Maybe it will be, with our help, with our collaboration, but someone will be able to take it forward as fast as possible, because obviously that's a big issue at the moment, and I think another mine that is of great concern is that viruses, they do not stay stable and static. They change, they evolve all the time. So we might find a more aggressive version of that, and that's the worry, I think.
Wow, you think there will be?
I hope not. But I read a report today about a mutation, so there's already some changes.
Wow. And why is it so deadly? What does it do to the body?
Okay, I think that the main thing for these sort of viruses, they come from animals, probably. They are foreign to humans. They are not the standard or the regular viruses that you encounter in your life. Usually, most of the people, they do not encounter these viruses. So when a certain virus adopts or is capable for some reason, because they change all the time also in animals, so when a foreign virus like that, which is not usually infecting people, introduced for the first time to humans, and that was the case also for SARS and MERS. I think in MERS it was from camels, and in SARS I think it was from avian or something like that. That was the origin. So whenever that step occurs, our bodies, our immune system, has no weapons against it, because our immune system is usually has its memory, and it really knows how to respond to, for example, for influenza.
Yes.
Each year we encounter a new version, right? Because they evolve all the time. But our bodies usually can maintain it because it already has the former antibodies, the former immune memory of this encounter. But with this sort of new viruses, we have nothing. So it's basically like going into a child that was never introduced to a pathogen, to something that caused the disease.
Wow, I see.
So that's part of the. I think part of the reason why we see these statistics and sort of so whoever is with a weakened immune system, for some reason, he suffers more, right? Because it takes time to develop the immune response and to respond to these viruses.
Yes, I know it attacks the lungs.
Right. And and I think that well, there are the numbers, the statistics changes at the moment. They're not entirely sure about what are the exact numbers, but it ranges between, I think, 1.4, that's the lowest, and 2 point something death rate from each from the population that was infected. This is relatively high if you consider influenza, the seasonal flu, but it is less than the SARS at the moment, and definitely less than the MERS, which were also versions of coronavirus, different ones. They were, at least statistically, they were deadlier in the past. But this version, the COVID-19, another feature that it has, that it infects relatively at high rate, and it is quite stable under outside conditions, so the room temperature, for example.
Yes, they say it is like heat can be a protection for against the virus. Is it true?
That what?
Heat, like places where it is hot.
So they say that. So I'm not entirely sure what are the exact number, but I think that the general opinion is that of the scientific community is that this virus indeed is sensitive to heat. So everyone hopes that when summer comes or when the temperature rises, it will be less prevalent. So, and maybe we will see a disappearance of this outbreak.
And what about the cure for coronavirus? How can people be cured?
Okay, so viruses in general, they are, I think in most cases, maintained by our body, by the immune system. So the immune system fights the virus, and once it succeeds to recognize it and to fight it, you have your own, in your body, you have your own memory cells and antibodies to fight any new encounter of the similar virus.
Yes.
Or the same virus. People who were infected already, they can either, so assuming that their immune system is okay and everything is okay, we are not sure what causes the violence, the critical violence in certain people, but there are also cures for that. I know that some companies are working on cures, so only after you got infected. That's a different story. I don't know what is the state of the development, but I know that they are progressing and they are trying also to come up with new, basically, medicine for this virus.
Yes.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. Because many times there are fake news about cures that could cure this and that could cure. So it is like quite a while.
So I can say that a very large pharmaceutical company called Gilead, it's Gilead, I think, they will develop a medicine, a therapy for, I think, for HIV, and they try to do something similar for COVID-19.
I see.
But pharmaceutical industry, they work in relatively, they have a structured way to approve these therapies, and it might take some time. So I don't know, but it is something that they are working on. Definitely, I read several reports about that.
Yes, some people say we have to take antiviral drug, and things.
So antiviral. So in general, our approach, and I think that most of the doctors will agree, the best way to deal with the new viruses is to give vaccines, because you prevent even the infection itself, right? And you don't have the burden on the health system, because people are not sick. They're just treated before.
Yes.
Medicine is obviously important for those who got infected already, and they want to avoid any disaster for them. So it is true that if someone will develop a good medicine for this virus, it will be an option. It will be a legitimate and very probably relevant option for the ones who got infected.
Yes, but antiviral drugs, you don't think it is useful?
It will be antiviral. No, it will be antiviral.
No, like the ones for the influenza, or the ones that strengthen the immune system.
You mean the current antiviral?
Yes.
So what they are developing antiviral drugs specific for COVID-19.
Yes.
I don't know what is the efficacy of the current antiviral drugs against this virus. You have to keep in mind that it's a relatively, I would say, new virus to humans. So
of course.
Probably whoever developed the antiviral drug did not have this specific virus in mind. And each virus is a little bit different. Sorry, each virus is different.
So you just told me it from animals, so we can rule out that it was man-made in a lab, right?
These are news that I cannot refer because I really don't have the information about it. I don't know what is the source of this virus. I only know that we got the sequences of the DNA once it was isolated and sequenced. That's the scientific part.
Yes.
The speculation part is really, it's not in our hand. And I heard a lot of different versions.
Yes.
I have nothing to say about it because I'm really not familiar with the actual source and how it evolved.
Yes. Now, are you testing this vaccine both in males and females? Because we have seen more males infected than females.
This is true that in a clinical study, you have to design it well in order to have the appropriate population to test it. Obviously, if you test it only on senior people, it will not give the same results as for other age groups. Again, this is part of the clinical study, the clinical phase that will be done. And I guess that will be the case, but there will be a specific design for this based on the regulations and based on the demands of the regulator authorities.
Okay, one of the passengers from the cruise, which had the COVID-19, had a relapse. How can you explain the relapse?
So regarding this, I really don't know what happened there. But one option, which is plausible, is that the detection, the test that they did, were not sensitive enough. So it could be that at some point they could not detect it, but it doesn't mean for sure that the patient didn't have it. Okay, whenever you do a test to find a virus or something in our body, it always depends on the accuracy and the sensitivity of the test that you are measuring. Since it's a new virus, again, I'm not sure how well the tests are already calibrated and set up. So I don't know. It is very strange, but I think that at least one possibility is that it was a matter of an error or an artifact or something like that of the test.
But the vaccine will prevent relapses, right? I mean, it will.
Vaccines, in principle, they are supposed to introduce the virus, okay, the pathogen, as we call it.
Yes.
The cause of the disease. They introduce the pathogen to our body, and then our body produces antibodies and the weapons, basically its weapons against the virus. So if this process is effective in the standard vaccines that we take, then you shouldn't have a return of the same virus. The problem with viruses is that they change all the time. So at some point, they can evolve distant enough from their source, and then they are, to our immune system, they will be regarded as sort of new viruses. Wow. It's a tricky game between how different a virus should evolve from its origin in order to evade the immune response.
Yes, but it's amazing that in all our adventure, like men, as a human being, there was none of this exposure to this virus, even when men ate animals and live animals, and suddenly this is something new. It's like amazing.
Well, maybe, okay. So I'm a scientist. I have to be very careful about what I'm saying. First of all, yes, you're right. There were examples, as you saw in the SARS and MERS. There are also corona family members that were introduced. It is not simple for viruses and pathogens in general. They tend to be very specific to a host, to specific host. for example, if it's birds, it's birds. If it's, I don't know, other animal, then it's a different animal. And normally there is a trade-off. So they are very specific. They're very good in attacking birds, but they cannot attack humans because of some differences between us in the genome, and obviously in other physiology, etc.
Yes.
So it is not. So we are encountering all the time, I guess, viruses and pathogens and bacteria that can be very I don't know, infectious for animals, for birds, but not necessarily for us, because they are not designed and they did not evolve for humans.
Yes.
I guess that's the answer, but
yes, I see. Now,
and maybe maybe we are treating food as well in a very in a certain way. We cook it, and again, it might be that we kill most of the pathogens, so there was no encounter.
I see. So now Israel is there are thousands of people in quarantine, and it's the airport is even almost deserted. The flights stopped.
Right.
So how will coronavirus disrupt our lifestyle?
So I'm not a health one of the health system. I'm really a scientist coming from a research institute, and I'm also experiencing the same things. We had the flights that we should have taken soon, and it was cancelled. It seems that at the moment the health ministry is trying to be cautious. It comes with a little bit of panic right to the people, because when you stop things and you put people in their house, and you really disrupt normal life. I'm really, I don't know where and how it will change from here. It can be very dramatic, and they will shut down everything, and they will say, okay, let's do some sort of a pause in all the education system and stuff. I really don't know. It's difficult for me to comment on that.
Who else is investigating in Israel? Are there more people, more institutes investigating?
Investigating the coronavirus specifically?
Yes.
I heard about at least, first of all, the Biological Institute, I guess. They are the government institute that should study these pathogens.
Yes.
And I think, I don't know, I'm not really familiar with others that are studying this. We have our partners in the veterinary hospital that are studying the coronavirus, the avian coronavirus. And probably there are some labs here and there, but I don't know of a specific group that was, united and initiated a project for the specific human COVID-19. Around the world, I know that there are dozens of researchers and research institutes that are trying to develop some sort of either antiviral drug or vaccines. So we are all going this way, and I hope one of these projects will succeed, because it really disrupts everyone's life, and it's an important issue, important topic. So we are all working for the benefit of, I think, for the people at the end of the day.
Are you working all the time? Are you working double than always?
So we are at the moment. The thing is that the facility itself is automatic. So we are only, taking care of ordering what we have, what we need, and designing all the experiments. But at the moment, there are lab technicians, and definitely we are going to work very hard once we have everything ready and we know exactly where we're gonna what results we want to bring for the preclinical and clinical phase. The batch or the production that is going to be given to human, as I mentioned, should be produced in a GMP. It's a good manufacturing procedure certification factory. So it's not something that we do here. We are only dealing with the laboratory grade and with the preclinical, with the very initial studies, and that's what we have at the moment. So sorry to disappoint.
Thank you so much.